call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Moraro?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 15th, 2020. Is there any questions on the minutes? If not, I need a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 15th, 2020.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to the approval of manifest 2020-13. Scott, do you have any questions?
I have nothing to approve.
I have none.
Jeff?
I do not, ma'am.
No questions, just a comment. We're running awful high. The manifest total this month is $689,842.61. And that's basically double what it should be because we've had to pay for all the insurances. We had to pay for the MERS, and it was $65,000 in subscription fees for communications. So that's why it's so high, and I know a lot of that insurance stuff is a yearly shot, so that's not going to be on there anymore. That's all I have.
I have one comment to make on the electric department. Where is it? Okay, it's on 5 of 9, Norway Spring. I brought this up last meeting. Case water, and then I see what cooler was canceled. Do you know? It
Cooler
says
was
cooler canceled.
I don't know, the cooler that we had was down at the hydro, they actually have 2 months on that cooler charge. Is that what they're
No,
referring
it
to?
says cooler canceled. I'm assuming maybe that's one of the couple coolers they bought at, the hardware store here in town.
I don't know, I can check in on that.
5 of 9, kind of in the middle, it's under Norway Spring. Electric, right, well, kind of partway down on, electric. It says Norway Spring Incorporated. It says
Okay.
bottle
okay.
deposit, case water, cooler canceled. And my other comment is, I brought this up last meeting. I know it's hot out and the guys need water, but I don't see us ordering case water for all departments. And I understand the case water is because of the COVID, but we're not supplying it to other departments, so I'm wondering why we're supplying it just to the electric department.
I'll check in on that, Ken.
That's my only question. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to manifest 2020-13, amount of $689,842.61 to approve.
Support.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
We'll go on to answering previous manifest questions.
Okay, we have a number of questions that came up last week. We provided the Trico contract that came up, that's through the DBA. The deep woods off towelettes, that was questioned, and that was something that was requested out of the electric department that had particular effect for the gnats when they were out working, or they're out working on, it started with the WPA job, and then now up on District 5. We do purchase insect repellent for all the departments, or they have that available in all of the departments. So,
But they
that's
all
what I can-
haven't ordered the towelettes, right?
No, that was something that I was told that, for some reason, whatever in the towelettes, that was their claim, is that worked effective against the gnats, whereas the spray was not as effective. The Hall's Hardware, that was a water cooler. I don't know if that was canceled. That's the one that was canceled on this particular meeting, but that was for the bottled water that you're questioning, so we'll wrap that up into another set of questions.
Yeah,
answers
ask on the
for
cooler,
next
because I
meeting.
don't remember buying regular coolers for any department either.
Right. We talked about the bottled water, I'm gonna check in on that, but as far as the
You
jug
didn't get an
coolers-
answer on the bottled water? It's just the COVID thing, is that what your answer was?
Right, that's my answer, so I have to go find out too about the other departments, and I'll have to talk to them about how they're handling, you know, with the COVID, we can't, we can't use the common, we usually use the 5-gallon jug, each truck has a 5-gallon jug on it, and we fill that up at the beginning of the day, and then they drink off of that, but we're not to use the common jugs, so,
So, Ray, question, are we able to have this one here? Any other departments, it'll be the same thing.
yeah, that one is a public issue. As I mentioned, we probably should have that one taken out. We were concentrating on our employees for the common.
It could be moved in the back. Oh, no,
Well, no, you basically.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a common,
You
yeah.
can't use the one off the-
You're right, I guess that one slipped that's a good point, that one slipped.
and maybe too, you could suggest, maybe you can bring in water bottles and you can fill them in the sink.
When you're out in the field, I don't think a standard water bottle, but you know, I'm gonna tell them, go get yourself you know, I know when I'm working out in the yard during the day, I have a large, water jug, just for myself. I mean, that should last them. So there's ways of handling it, so I'll check on that one, I'll get back on that one. The one with the 2 water jug coolers, those are actually 2 months. That's for the hydro, and those are 2 months. So they do not have one down at the shop. The junction boxes, those are for District 5 Road. We've had some of our material, the junction boxes is one of them that we've had a delay from manufacturer
Is that
because of
what,
COVID.
is that what's called the shelves?
Yeah, the junction boxes.
I didn't
And-
know that they were called.
And the same thing with meter pedestals. We've had a delay in meter pedestals just from the manufacturer because they're all backed up. So a lot of that stuff was supposed to come in today, or actually this past week. So we should be getting quite a few deliveries. And then that energy control, that was a sensor failure. A sensor failed, and so it kept it into high firing mode. And obviously in the last week we don't need high firing mode. So they had to come in and check and fix that sensor.
Okay. Anyone wishing to address the council on an agenda item only shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the records. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes.
Gary Waffle, speaking on behalf of Bob, Cindy, and Dave Waffle. My address is Brighton Township, of course, W7397 of Pine Creek Road. I think you have before you today a request for an easement to property that is close to, falls on the Wisconsin side, closer to the power dam. And this has been accessed for quite a few years, back as far as I can remember. An existing road that goes into my father's and uncle's property. And, you know, we have always been access through there, but there's no legal easement that's ever been there. So pretty much landlocked back there as far as being able to legally access that road. I guess, you know, I'd like to ask if you guys have any questions questions. I'm not sure exactly what you have in front of you, but, you know, I can certainly answer any questions that you might have regarding that. Or if you just have a copy, would you?
Well, I think the biggest issue here, Gary, is city property in question is located within the FERC-regulated boundaries, and that's the problem.
That is a problem.
We got rules and regulations that we have to follow, but basically they say.
Okay, understood. So, you know, given that, had a conversation and worked with WE Energy, Todd Stremski. I had them in contact with Grant and Jacob Lynch, who represent my dad and uncle. So we went through that whole process as far as the difficulty, what you're dealing with FERC, and how they handle that process through WE Energy surrounding their power dams. I think he really gave Grant and Jacob some good information to work with as far as what had to be done, any restrictions that there might be. You know, his comments to me that it's pretty easy, it's an easement that could be done. You know, it just has to be reported. It's an easement that can be granted. As long as there's no improvements to the road, no dirt moved, you know, you're not going in and improving anything, moving anything, just, you're using the existing road that's been there for probably 80 years, 70 or 80 years, but.
My only question, really, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, fine, we can give you the easement here, because it says, only revocable easement should be granted, since this provides the city with the best protection to avoid anyone violating this provision. And as you can see, the provision to grant easement, bottom line is that we have to monitor it and ensure compliance with the license. Now, hopefully, we're trying to sell this, all that property.
Is that part of the property that we have for sale right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
where they're doing the timber cutting on.
Okay.
And what's gonna happen if somebody comes along and we sell it? Would something have to be put in there to protect you, or would you have to go through this whole process again? But this time around, you'd be going through whoever buys it, you know?
Yeah, I don't believe so. There's, I'd have to ask Grant and a legal,
Yeah, unless there's something that can be put in there that says, hey, you know?
Yeah, so legally, I'm not sure, but, even going back 20 years, Matt Westrich and McLean Haynes and Lon Woodruff, but they own a piece of property that's now owned by Steve Frame and it borders the property of the city of Norway. They were granted an easement then, so my father and uncle were granted an easement by Matt and Westrich, but when that property sold, they obviously can't convey their easement to them, so that's where the problem lies. So it's kind of partial. There's the amount of the existing road just to get to the Frank's property line that's there. The other thing is that for years they've provided access to the backside of the city of Norway property, which is boy, I wish I would have brought a map. I did print them
Could
out.
I keep you for a minute? He's past the 3 minutes. He can ask to extend it, and we can say yes or no. So,
Could I extend it 3 minutes, please?
does my council have a problem with it?
No, that's fine. I think he's just going
Right.
right in line with the agenda and the next agenda item.
But I just have to.
Yep, nope, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, Gary, I'm sorry.
So currently, there's an access that really gives you easy access to the backside of the property, would be the west end of the property. You have some logging activities that are going to happen back there too, so there's a wetland kind of in between, which would be on the riverside. It's really difficult to, access. So it's always been, our practice to have the city use that, just like it's their own going to the back side of the property and the city's property. It borders what's called the slough back there. There's kind of a backwater a little bit. But yeah, there's access always been granted to the city to go back there. And now we have a logging, you guys are having that logged off on the west end. Really a lot easier access back there through that property and through the property owners that are to get that timber off of that property without a whole lot of difficulty, staying in an upland area, not disturbing any of those wetlands down in some of the areas, which I believe are, you know, on that side, are some archaeological.
That's what I was just gonna ask you,
Right.
what about,
Yeah, those,
is that included in the piece that you want?
no, not even close. So those concerns, there used to be what's called, there used to be a trading post down in the area along the river. There's some archaeological things back there, which is why some of the gates were put up, so we had access to some of that property way in the backside, so that four-wheelers wouldn't be running through there and tearing any of that area up and whatnot. So-
I don't have a problem with it, and I would really like to help you out, but I don't feel like we have enough information in front of us, because we really have to not jeopardize our licensings at the dam. I mean, I don't know how, I'm not saying no, but I just feel like we need a little more information, because we really cannot jeopardize that, because we would be in big trouble.
Grant, where are you at with it legally with that? Are you comfortable yet with this process with FERC?
With Jake Lynch and I have been working on this a little bit. As Gary referenced, this has come up before. There's a number of property owners that are back in that area, back along the line that gets to Gary's property. This came up about a year and a half ago, a year ago, initially for the first time that I saw it since I've been your attorney, and worked at least a little bit with an attorney out in Wisconsin. And at that time, it was, I took the position, as we try to do, listening and hearing Mr. Meneghetti, often, hey, this is not on the city's dime to be putting this together and working to create these scenarios for us. So that kind of dropped off. A little bit of legwork was done, but that was the first time I saw it. Then I was talking to Gary here for a little while, and again, without getting deep into it, because I didn't know where the council stood. I certainly don't want to invest and have a ton of time into it if the council says we have no interest whatsoever, we're not going to authorize or green light you to put in 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, whatever it takes to make sure we're protected. That all being said, I have an obligation to at least get the ball rolling, and I wanted to at least be prepared for today. I knew Gary was coming. I told him that I would make an effort to get this in front of council for your consideration, at least a discussion with as much information as I could. I did take some action. I spoke with Mr. Anderson. We tried to brainstorm as many different scenarios. As Mr. Meneghetti said, the FERC issue is the biggest glaring issue, of course. We can't by any means jeopardize it. No offense and no insult to Mr. Laughlin or the family, but it has to be that way. We have to protect the city first.
Right.
And so we did reach out. Mr. Anderson reached out to Sean Pouzin at Mead and Hunt, who's in charge of our FERC licensing compliance. That does, you guys see it, authorize it, look at it every single year. Mr. Pouzin has frankly been very, very helpful, very quick, and I've been happy with the response, how fast. I think I cut and pasted a lot of his information he provided to me in email to give me a jump start on these things. And his concern, or his comment always and continued to be was, as Lee mentioned, right to the point, as the license holder, we are responsible for licensing compliance. And if there's not licensing compliance, it comes on us. So along those lines, I also reached out, you saw my memo, I hope it was very eloquently written. I reached out to a gentleman out in Washington, D.C., Robert Fletcher, who's in charge of FERC compliance and oversees FERC regulations. I think that's kind of when we send our information to each year. I spoke to him just on, I think it was Thursday. Again, kind of scrambling, trying to get as much information I could for the meeting, but also not invest a ton of time. Had a great conversation with him. He was very appreciative, had wonderful things to say about Norway, the regulations, and our compliance with the requirements. Thanked us for calling and being proactive, and then we started discussing a few of the issues that we talked about. He did say that giving easements on minor, quote-unquote, minor access roads, which I described this to him as a two-road, which I believe is what it is. And under our FERC license, we're able to do that. The biggest thing his concern was, is again, whether or not it was ground disturbing activity. Sometimes you'll see a developer come in, if Mr. Laughlin sells this property to a developer and they want to put a highway in or put a bigger road in, you start really getting into the bigger issues as well. So we kind of walked through that a bit. Mr. Pouzin, our engineer, has been telling and been consistent that we really should make it revocable. Speaking with Mr. Lynch, the concern, of course, is that a revocable easement really isn't an easement. It's more of a license or just a permission to use it. We can revoke it at any time. And you have to have, when these properties are being sold, you need the title companies to underwrite them.
Right, yeah.
You need the mortgages to be backed and appropriate and not revocable. You need access. If you don't have access, the property's value goes down, and that's what these title companies are looking for. So that is a bit of an issue. When I was chatting with Jake, his comments and speaking with Gary and the family was, they will agree to do what they need to do in order to gain access to this property. Jake has been very clear. I've spoken to Gary about it, to try to get some background and understanding of it. Jake's comment again was whatever we need to do. The language that he put in the easement had basically, we try to brainstorm as many safeguards as possible regarding width, use, revocability, and at least give those mechanisms, or put those mechanisms in place. When I was talking to Mr. Fletcher, I kind of ran some of that stuff by him as well, and he kind of just said, he chuckled, he said, well, that's always just the kicker, it's compliance. If we have to force compliance, the biggest hammer, of course, is revocability. Just pull it. That usually works as much as you can sometimes. Going through court process involves more attorneys, more costs, more issues. And so he referenced, and what he pointed me to, I think I attached it as well, it's called the Lindweave Clause. Back in 1983, there's in the regulatory agency under FERC, they had a clause that came into play because this does happen on occasion. They suggested and recommended that it goes into anything like this. It's a Lindweave Clause that basically says, as license holders, we can transfer this and they can take it subject to that Lindweave Clause, and we can do anything we want, anything we need to do to make sure to bring that back into compliance. So if Mr. Laughlin or the successor in interest comes through and puts a paved road in, that's a violation, a clear violation for under the Lindweave Clause. We, as license holders, go in and we have to do what we have to do to return that to its present condition.
We would have to go to court for that, though?
If it wouldn't be completed, you get into, it's in the clause, it's in there, there's always going to be open for litigation. Whether or not it's in there or not, is it reasonable, what's reasonable, is it a real violation, is it not a violation? There's always going to be some gray area that we're never going to probably be able to get rid of completely. So, long story short, Mr. Moraro, my comfort level on something like this is never going to be a 10 out of 10. It just isn't.
Yeah.
I've started, and when I talked to Mr. Fletcher, I got further along. I spent some considerable time on, I think it was Wednesday actually, trying to get at least up to speed so I at least had a feel for it versus coming in blind and having some information to talk about and some guidance for the council. But at the same time, I didn't want to jump completely into the pool without council's permission to go a little further. I think we're close to being there as far as, partly it's just up to council. It appears as though in the FERC license you're able to grant an easement because it appears to be a minor access road. But then you get into some of these other issues on the compliance issues,
Right.
revocability, and then and not to open a Pandora's box, but we don't have a policy in place on when do you grant them, when do you not grant them. I looked at the DNR, looks at Wisconsin, the Michigan DNR kind of has a guideline of, is it for the public good? Is it going to harm anything? Is there an access? Is there width restrictions? Is there a reciprocal easement? One of the things I'm sure Gary would have no issue with, and he alluded to it actually. As council considers something like this, I think it would make sense to include a request if council was inclined to do this now or at some point to make it reciprocal. Because we may want to, and it sounds like we have access the backside of our property through this existing road, through these landowners. These landowners could, of course, say no more access. So if we have an access for us as well, then it would benefit us down the road in turn.
Well, first of all, Gary, I want to help you and your family go back just a long time. I think, we want to do what we can do here. the key thing that you just said, Grant, for me, is as long as FERC can revoke our license, we have to be able to revoke any deals we make with anybody that could cause our license to be revoked. So revocability to me is gonna be a key issue here. Because to your point, if FERC comes in and says, guess what, you know, you've changed, we're pulling your license, well, where does that leave us then?
And we can't have that dam shut down, and no offense, we gotta think about that. But I mean, if we can help and we can get this in order, I wanna help the Lawful
Yeah,
family. They had a
so do I.
business here for years. But another question I wanted to ask you, did you get a hold of, the Illinois, FERC office?
I called down there and shockingly before the 4th, no answer, no return. I called Mr. Fletcher, Mr. Kuzen provided the number, and he picked up, coming back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I just got a chance to chat with him, but I haven't circled back to that.
Yeah, because maybe even if we could get a hold of the girl, I know it's a lady that comes in every year that does our FERC licensing, maybe she would have a little bit of insight too, or she could direct you to where there would be some insight for this.
Well, and along those lines, and this is a real, there's a lot of layers to this. There's a lot of layers. One of the things that Mr. Fletcher referenced would be to actually, I mean, again, his first comment that caught me off guard was this really isn't a huge deal. Okay, it happens a lot. However, you have to just make sure you're protected, make sure everything's squared away. The archaeological site Mr. Laughlin brought up, we're in an unsurveyed area, but like as Gary referenced, it's not near there, but it's still unsurveyed, so we don't know that 100%, and we know where it's at, but it's unsurveyed. But the other thing, as long as it's unsurveyed, it just can't be disturbed, and it doesn't look like anybody's going to disturb this. On top of that, however, we don't know what the next person may do. Okay?
Right.
Also, Mr. Fletcher referenced what I thought made some sense, is if the property isn't essential to our FERC license and isn't essential to our dam operations, you can simply just remove this portion of the property from our overall FERC license and just pull it out. And you still own the property. Nothing changes with ownership. It's just not subject to the FERC license, and you just adjust your boundaries of the license.
Is it essential?
So it's not essential. But
No,
that's what
Ray?
he advised me. No.
I've been working with property sale potential for 10-plus years.
Okay.
I hate to say it that way. Because we have the 40 acres that's over on the Wisconsin side by the piers. We have 13 acres that's on the opposite side of 577. So it has no attachment physically with our hydro property. And the way the process goes is that if we have to submit a request to FERC. In that request, and that's a request to do what you're saying, you take it out of the boundary, you take it, you sell it, okay? And the first thing that happens is that request goes out to the agencies, Wisconsin, Michigan, DNR, Fish and Wildlife, Birds and Feathers, I don't know, whoever else is.
All the ones that pay all this stuff for.
All the ones that have been putting stuff into our license in the first place. Okay, so, right off the bat, they give a negative letter. I mean, I begged the Michigan DNR to give us a neutral letter, like the 13 acres we have down by, on the opposite side of 577. They wouldn't do it. So what happens is those negative letters go into FERC, and then FERC denies it. So it's a real struggle. To get it out of the license is, I'm just saying, it's not an easy task. Now, from a timing standpoint, I mean, this isn't gonna help what these guys are trying to do. From our standpoint, is it a fight we should start? I don't wanna use the word fight. Is it a process that we wanna start to go with? Because, it's gonna take some time to go through that. Now, on the flip side of this, is this something that, in talking with our friend out in Washington now, Mr. Fletcher, is it something that they could help go through based on what we're going through? I can also tell you that, just to go back to some of the comments, because I've been working with this for quite a long time on just trying to sell some of the properties and find interest, the language in the license does transfer if we sell that property and it's in the boundary, it does transfer. And that's why, one of the areas that we've been working with is the DNR, because the DNR has the same, well, they're one of the letter writers.
Right.
And so, I did have a conversation with the Wisconsin DNR. This goes back to last year when we had the original request, because that came up, and I think you guys brought that up at that time. It's like, oof, we don't want to mess up, if they're interested in. And they didn't have any issue with that, with an easement through, provided that we do what we're talking about. We have, some kind of language and revocability, whether it's a strict or limited or expanded, however, but you have some ability in that the property owners that you're giving easement to have an understanding and follow that they don't do anything to change, the current conditions. So the DNR did say that they didn't find that as any issue. Now, if they go and start making changes, if we start making a bunch of changes, I think they probably would if it's pre-sale, because they want it the way it is, whether it has the restrictions or not, because those restrictions are something they're gonna keep anyway.
Yeah, and when we deal with FERC, it's very technical. They watch everything we do. If it wasn't down by that dam, I would feel more comfortable with it. And like I said, I'm not saying no, but I don't know if the council's quite comfortable making a decision right now, unless you guys are.
I'd like to see Grant spend some more time on it and try to come up with a plan or idea or something in writing or language, to make this possible. You know what I mean? So that everybody is in compliance, let's call it.
Hey Gary, if we do it revocable, is it still gonna help you sell the property? That's before we put.
Is there still pending here?
I guess one thing before we had to look around and address that, you brought up, we can't have the Norway power dam closed. That goes without saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who else has more interest in power dams than just the city of Norway? WE Energies. So that's why I reached out to a contact there, Todd Stremski, who deals with this on a regular basis. And Todd explained to me, and I got in contact with Grant and Jacob, that this is a process that's done all the time by WE Energies. They've got obviously more money tied up in power dams than anybody at all. So, if that process if they can partake in that process, I didn't want to give Grant or Jacob that information because I'm an interested party. I wanted them to hear that from somebody else, that deals with this on a regular basis, and Todd deals with FERC on a regular basis. That's what he does, so I wanted to at least let Grant hear that from him. And,
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, Gary, I appreciate that, and I do appreciate, Mr. Yastrzemski's knowledge in the process. I talked to him as well because that's all he does. He does the FERC work and the dam work for WE Energies. But in circling back with our engineer, Mr. Puzin, who then also had a conversation with Mr. Yastrzemski, he didn't say anything about the revocable versus irrevocable, and WE Energies does not do an irrevocable easement. So the process is pretty straightforward, but it comes down to the revocability, and that's something that was kind of left out of that
we
conversation.
discussed that.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't give anybody an easement through and say, do what you want.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? But, we're willing to have whatever language in there. Time is of the essence at the moment. There's a pending sale for the pulling out on the 17th, I believe. If we cannot get this easement settled, I've got the other two parties that are landlocked parties already, in agreement with access through their property. Without going any further, one thing and I know we've got a lot of things to deal with as far as your concerns. Bob and Dave have been huge contributors to this community for as many years as we can all remember, tax dollars and people in the community working. I don't know that, there are many companies, there are a few companies that were as big a part of building this community in this city as they were.
And your grandfather started it
And my
here.
grandfather, yeah, how I live, you know.
Right.
You know, many of us have parents that are a huge part of building this community. And, you know, I guess in light of we've been working on this, I've been trying to work through this for probably 6 months, probably. And so the buyers, like if you had a buyer, they're kind of up against the wall and they're threatening to pull out of the deal if they can't close by the 17th. So that's kind of where we're at. Worked pretty hard to try and get everything in order.
Here's where I'm at, Gary. Basically, if revocability's in there, as long as we have revocability, and I'm fine with it. I mean, that's the key issue here. I don't need any more information than that. We just have to be able to revoke, so we don't get our license revoked.
Is this gonna hurt us if because we can only sell that to the dealer, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's
So
what the
if
conclusion
we
is.
have easement going through there, and they say, hey, hang on a second, I don't want property that's got easement going through it.
Well, we revoked the easement.
They didn't indicate that.
But then they could come back after us and say, what's the reason, because we didn't do anything wrong.
We can put any language we want in there, is what I'm getting at, Scotty. Yeah, maybe he'll have to add some language there, but there'll have to be some stipulations for revocability. That could be one of them. If we decide to sell it, guess what?
That'd be good.
There already is an existing easement through there that was granted 20 years ago. You know, so there's one existing easement that's already through that piece of property, which is to Steve Frank, which was conveyed to that new property owner, Steve Frank, and I'm not gonna try to pronounce his partner's name. But, you know, it was originally granted to Matt Westridge from Monthly.
For the city of Norway?
Yeah, that was
Yes.
in the past.
So we have an easement granted through our FERC property, existing easement granted through that FERC property right now?
Back in.
Yeah, but you gotta remember FERC wasn't as technical as it is.
No, I understand, but,
Well, the current license didn't go into effect until '04.
so do we fall under, with that existing easement, do we fall under the same, conditions with FERC?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, but like that's right, I mean, I think it looks like it was an 03 easement.
Okay.
But when these licenses come in, so they look at what's existing already in place at that time, and then consider at that point. So it's already in place when the license, or the FERC license was renewed or created, however the heck these things
Okay.
came about. That being said, I think because it goes over our property, we probably have some obligations.
Right.
But it didn't affect our license because it wasn't in place at that time.
Yeah, again, go ahead, Ray.
If I could, I mean, one of the things that we've gone back and forth, Gary and I, and with Grant and Jacob, is the whole issue is the ability, like you said, about revocability. And what is the minimum that a title company, like in this case, what is it that they're going to accept? And so, you know, if we had, and we were just throwing this out, I mean, if there is the ability to have a very narrow revocability clause, you can call it irrevocable if you want, but there's a narrow revocability clause in it that says, you know, we can't willy-nilly just pull out. Future councils or whoever can't just pull out just for the sake of it. And if there's a violation, you know, such as a future owner or somebody comes in and does something, we notify them, you give them 60 days, 90 days, whatever the time period, that they restore it. And if they don't restore it, then we revoke it. I mean, that might, I don't know if you had a chance to talk to the title company to whether something like that would fly in there, but that still gives you the revocability.
Yeah, Jacob has worked with the title company and, you know, we're willing to put that language in there, you know, I believe that, I'm not sure, I haven't read through a lot of other easements, but, and I haven't read through the easement that's existing, if it's worded that way, or if those clauses are in there, that
The whole
existing.
the whole three
Right,
easement?
no. You know, but, you know, I guess, you know, title company will accept that, and they're willing to do that. Yeah, I mean,
That's something that we've thrown out on the table, because it still gives us the ability to enforce that compliance is being made. That's, I think, And Grant, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think in our conversation with Mr. Fletcher, that was basically the bottom line, is that you have, the easiest way is just a full, flat-out revocable easement, but the bottom line is, even if you did an irrevocable easement, we have a responsibility to make sure they comply, and so the easiest way is to have a revocable easement. If you have language in the easement for all of the property owners who are granted, that we could pull it if they violate, then at least that's...
And they would have to bring it back to normal conditions.
Correct, it has to come back to the
Applying to FERC, licensing, whatever.
Right, it would be strict, it would be strict.
I would say,
Yeah.
and we would have the option, of course, if they can't do it time enough, we'd have the option to restore and bill the owner. Okay, again, because FERC's gonna come in to give us 60 days to get back right.
Yep.
You know.
I've never heard a number, though.
That's, yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
again, but I'm comfortable, personally, I'm comfortable in, if we can do something like that, I would vote for it. And
Just
not
gotta
screw
make
the
sure
sale
our
up.
I's are dotted and T's are
Right.
crossed.
Yeah.
Because it is the federal government.
Yeah.
No one say any more about that.
And, I know that access to the other side is, you still want to grant that to you. It is a benefit for you guys to be able to get to that other side of the property.
Excuse me, Gary, did you say the 17th of July or August?
July. We've been working on this working pretty hard on this.
Okay, so say a grant comes up with something new and everything's hunky-dory, we don't have our next meeting until the 20th.
I can call a special meeting.
I mean, to get this so it doesn't
You have to
screw
call
them up,
special
Yeah, I can call a special meeting.
So how.
And what is Grant's timeline? I mean, we're all saying this, we don't know what he's got going. And how much time do you want Grant to put into this?
Well, I hate to bring it up, but
That's a cost.
Gary's coming to us to get this. Any costs should be incurred by you.
Yeah, I understand that, I really do.
Do you know what his hourly rate is before you say you understand?
I understand that, but also, I'm not saying that Grant should put it on, that's why I try to do a lot of the legwork.
Well, I also think that there's two easements here as well, the one that's going across the backside for the city use and the front easement as well.
The city.
So I think there's, cost on both sides.
I think so.
Yeah, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
of course.
Yeah.
Gary, have you talked to the other, so when Jake put this together, what's in front of council, it wasn't just an easement for the law firm trust, it was also the Kotskis and the Franks and the Komazowski, some of the other property owners.
Yeah, I see
Safari
that.
goes on that too.
The reason, that was how Jake had done it up, but the thought process behind that was so that the other landowners, they're at least using this property as it is now. However, then they would be subject to the same regulations, requirements, obligations, and penalties, if you will, of the compliance issues. Have you chatted with them at all about whether they'd be willing to give a reciprocal easement for the city to pass back over their property as well?
I have one other question, if I may. So, right now, we have these other property owners with access. It's not legal access, it's just, we've done it, it's been access over time. If they damage the property right now, we have limited ways of going after them except in court. I mean, that might be another way to look at it. Either that or we just take away the keys and everything and just say no more access to anybody. But then we have to have a process in place as well. Those are, I'm kind of throwing this at Grant a little bit. Yeah, step back here. Kind of throwing this at Grant a little bit. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, people have been going over the properties for decades and decades and
Are
decades.
you referring to the gentleman with the horses?
We've had that issue. We've had that issue, and, and there's other property owners, we've mentioned the names, I mean, it's been a friendly agreement over time, but in thinking about it in this strict context, we don't really have any official recourse if something does happen.
If I decide to go through the bulldozer and improve that road right now, there'd be no repercussions, roads there. I said, I'm gonna widen this thing out and do some stuff, like you're saying, it's really.
I mean, without us going to court.
Yeah, right.
I mean, which we're required to do
Yeah,
if you did that.
exactly,
Right.
yeah. Which this easement would, with some of those blocks.
It might strengthen our ability to, you know, you have something that, to keep everybody on the same page.
So how many hours do you guys want?
I think it's gonna take.
Who's gonna pay
I think it's
for it?
gonna take as many hours as it takes. You know, am I right by saying that, Grant? It
Well,
could
by
take
saying that,
5 hours, 10
and
hours.
Just per council, I think if we grant the law firms, anybody that comes to the council, we're gonna have to grant them the same thing.
Oh, we have to charge, we have to
You know what I
charge.
mean? And if we're gonna be putting a ton of money into lawyer fees, we might have to with each person that wants to come to the council for easement through our property. That's just a consideration.
But can we make a statement, like I've said before, that we are not setting precedent? Each case will be handled individually?
With now, can you say that, or can you say you're discriminating against me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I think the point with this one is, the city's looking for easement back through. So there's something to be said about that, right?
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I think the law firms realize that there's gonna be a certain cost to this, but, I mean, I know if you talk, as long as you did it earlier tonight, when you're on the phone with these guys, the bill's gonna be astronomical, you know?
Well, I cut you guys a 50% break in the fees, so the city resident of the city, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kinda open-ended right now, right? I mean, you can't put a price on it.
Or a timeline. I mean, I think that.
But we also have to,
I think that the people that are getting the easement should, you know, incur some of that cost, but the city should incur some of that cost as well.
That should be split all the way.
You know, there's.
Equal on that.
There's a
everybody's
reciprocal on there,
benefiting.
yeah.
Everybody's benefiting from having this
Yeah.
easement.
But, you know, the city's also benefiting from the easement going
Yep.
through that property.
Absolutely.
So that way,
And that's-
if there's more people using that thing, that's included in the city, those four should be.
and we'll probably already incur the cost that he already,
Oh,
what he did for us, then
absolutely.
we're not gonna,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my point is it's to your benefit too.
Yeah.
Grant, getting
Yeah.
that
Yep.
all the way through the property to the backside. It's not like I'm saying, hey, give us this and, you know, there's reciprocal.
Oh, absolutely.
right, and your lawyer did a lot of the work. I mean, I think the revoking thing is what we've gotta get Grant, that his main thing to,
Yeah, and let me be clear, kind of along these lines, Mr. Lynch took the bull by the horns and ran with this because of it's our policy. That's how we've always done it. So, you know, we have an obligation, I'm not gonna jump into the pool that deep without
right,
getting, the opinion of council. I got enough to get educated and brought up to speed. This FERC stuff is not exactly clean and easy reading.
we know.
But I got enough to at least be able to come before you guys today and have a discussion about some of the pros and cons. But Mr. Lynch really did, he did the
Yes.
easement at my request. I said, put it together, make it as pliable as possible with as many protections for the city as possible. And he did that. We did exchange a few, try to get it as best we could to you guys beforehand, just to get that. So he's done most of the heavy lifting. I've just been trying to check things and make sure I's are dotted as best I can with the circumstances up to this point.
What kind of timeline would you think you'd need?
I think that,
I mean, obviously before the 17th.
I wish I could've got it here in front of you a lot earlier, but.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I think that's enough time.
this day and age with all the rules and regulations, you know, it's just not like in the
Yeah,
days
no,
of
it
your
ain't like it
dad.
used
Not
to.
like in the days of your dad when you shake hands, okay, it's a done deal and that's it, you know?
Some of it depends on, availability. When I called down from Chicago, the first contact I tried, he's on vacation right now.
Yeah.
And they weren't around. So I tried another number, got ahold of this young man who was helpful as could be. Jake has indicated he's willing to help as much as humanly possible, and I'll do the same. So,
Well, Candy, can one of us make a motion to say, pending, the illegal documents getting put together, we can call a special session?
No, we were not even there yet, but I wouldn't do that, not until you got the document in front of you, we can't.
Okay.
I can call a special meeting on that document,
Okay.
if it has to be voted on, right, Ray?
Yeah,
I just gotta give
18 hours.
like 18-hour
18
notice
hours.
and I can call a special meeting. So you don't wanna put any language in there at this point, right, Grant, don't you think?
there's too many layers.
Yes,
This one-
yeah.
Sometimes it's okay, but I think this one, there's too many layers.
Yes.
to it.
Gotcha.
I would,
And it's not that we want it clear, we want to work with you, but we just have to make sure we're protected, this,
And I'm
yeah.
willing to do whatever I have to do.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for giving me more than 3 minutes.
It was the longest 3 minutes ever. It was the longest 3 minutes in history. Thanks, Gary.
Take it easy, guy.
I'm gonna stay in this.
All right.
It gets me out of a conference call.
All right, no public hearing, presentations, we'll move on to communication. Mr. Anderson, well, we already talked about this, property access easement request. We talked about this when Mr. Laughlin just presented to us. At this time, we'll just take no action on it, and we'll let our lawyer proceed with what we directed him to do at this time. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to approval of salt shed project, structure with base, asphalt base, security fencing. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I split this project out into 3 separate communication items. We'll do a discussion here, lumping the whole thing. It's all that salt shed project. And what we actually have is, we have it broken down into, the DPW is all set to do the site work. If you remember back, we had GEI came in and did some investigation on site, put our site plan together for us, did some subsoil investigation, and it was determined that we should take out 1 foot of soil around native soil or disturbed soil, I guess, it's not native, but where the structure's going to be, and 1 foot outside of the perimeter of the new structure, and refill with gravel. So that is all provided at DPW. They are going to go in and perform that work. According to David, he was going to start that this week. So the other parts of it involve it's going to be an asphalt floor. We chose asphalt over concrete because asphalt actually is a preferred flooring for salt. If you think about it, asphalt, the salt is on your streets, and we know what happens when the salt gets on your concrete. You'd have to have a really special mix of concrete in order for it not to be damaged heavily by that particular type of salt content that we use for the streets. Anybody who's tried to use that salt on their sidewalks and knows what I'm talking about. It tears up a regular sidewalk pretty fast. So we went out for bids on the asphalt. We also looked and put together pricing for the fabric structure that we've talked about now for the last year using for our the storage. And along with that fabric structure, it actually comes into 2 components. There's a concrete knee wall setup that goes up about 8 feet. That's where your material will be able to back up against, and then the fabric structure actually sits on top of that. And then the last part was security fencing around the property. So we got bids on the fencing, and we got bids on the asphalt, and we got quotes on the structure and the concrete. So I broke those up into 3 areas.
That's what I was gonna ask, in them 3 areas, so then we gotta have 3 resolutions?
Yeah, I would
to
take 3
separate out?
separate motions, yeah, for approval. And that's what I did. I split it up into 3 separate resolutions. So if you have any questions on any of the details.
I have questions.
I do too.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Structure's concrete base. So I noticed that there's, the only things you provide us at the meetings are the winning bids or your recommended bids. You don't provide anything else from the other bidders. You got a $350 difference on a $70,000 structure. Hang on.
Tell you why.
Big Top is local.
No, Big Top's in Florida.
Okay, but what's this, TCR is gonna do the work on Iron Mountain, Michigan.
TCR put a bid together for the concrete, and under Big Top's requirements,
Yeah,
it takes a poured concrete wall, 2 foot wide, 2 foot wide by 8 foot high, which will then have a footing. So I had to go out to TCR to get a poured concrete wall.
okay, so TCR, there's no local bids for this at all? Well, obviously Iron City Enterprises isn't local.
Iron City is, no, they're out of Wisconsin.
Okay.
They work together. Iron City works in the area doing they do.
It's
gravel
fine.
as well.
I just thought we had a local dealer with TCR.
Yeah. No,
For
we-
$350 is my point. If
That was
there's
my,
somebody
would be
local-
my
No.
question too.
No, I didn't have their bid on, okay, let me go back.
Okay.
I did not have the concrete wall bid on Thursday when we sent this out.
Okay.
So the concrete bid from Iron City is $26,000. That's the form.
Yeah. You got that?
Looking at the amount of concrete that's going in a 2-foot wide by 8-foot high, another 10-foot high, because you're gonna go down another 2 feet into the ground, and the rebar that goes into it, it's gonna be north of $100,000 for that base. I didn't know what the number was.
Gotcha.
So that's what I did. I did receive the bid today, and it was north of 100.
Okay.
So, I mean, that particular type of structure is out. Now, the other thing that I did the last week is I contacted the building code, construction code. They do require stamped drawings, a building permit and stamped drawings. Made sure everybody on the bidders knew that they were gonna have stamped drawings. And actually, Structures Unlimited, when they initially were told about it, they included it as an option. And I told them they had to have it, so they included that back in. So their price went up a little bit. My question was, and I spent time on, how does that detail look for sitting on the pavement or sitting on the ground? How does that all look? Now, the bottom line is that they have to have an approved building permit and stamped drawings. So, one of the things we're gonna require, I sent them they have a copy of our agreement that we've already worked on with contractors. So they know what our contract looks like in our agreement, which includes the liabilities. So that, and I even reached out to a couple engineers that we all know, and asked them the same questions. And they said, basically, if we have the building code, we have, staff drawings required, they wouldn't have a problem going with that design.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And, I don't know if Jeff had mentioned Midwest Asphalt and Gravel, they were the only ones that.
They were the only ones that bid on the asphalt.
Okay, and I've seen as we're over budget, and we seem to be over budget on everything we do. Do we really need the 8-foot concrete wall?
8 foot high?
Yeah, and then the dome is going on top of that.
But that'll increase the price and structure. Because the height, it's the overall height, so we have the 8 foot on the block. And that was what was recommended as a standard that
Oh,
they have.
okay.
They have those, I went through and I got, talked to them about all the locations that they put this structure up, using for the same purpose. And that's a standard designed for.
And the other item on that, do we really need 850 feet of security fence?
To secure it around the perimeter of the property, yes. That's how much.
What's gonna be inside there besides the salt shed?
You'd be surprised at how many people are taking that salt down.
Oh, I know.
We're gonna move our utility poles over there, which are now over on the other side, and transformers. So we're gonna have some other laydown. We wanna utilize that property. Right now, we're limited.
Well, I know in the past, people have gone down there to get salt, like to do their alleys and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
they've used it for not their own personal use, just because the city doesn't salt the alleys sometime, it don't get to them, And one more thing here, where it says, remove 1 foot of existing material and replace it with compacted aggregate.
Yes.
The work will be done by the DPW. And under the report from GEI, it says the existing fill and organic materials are not suitable for support of footings or slabs on grade. We recommend all existing fill and organics within the footprint of the proposed structure be completely removed to expose the natural inorganic soils, and the resulting evacuation be filled with structural fill material.
Right.
Because I'll guarantee you, 5 years from now, it's gonna sink somewhere.
So, yeah, David's been in contact with Brett By, and that's where you got the 1 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went through that report, he's had that report, so.
Well, 5 years from now, I'm gonna come and talk to you and say, hey, it sank.
Okay.
Hey Lee, to your point, we'll just have to find a place to cut $14,490 out of the budget, that's
Well,
all.
there you go.
Any other questions?
I know it would be prohibitive to muck it all out.
Do I have a motion on resolution 1?
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid on resolution 1.
Support.
Not to exceed?
Not to exceed, let me find it here.
All right.
Not to exceed $69,650.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Move on to resolution number 2. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we, adopt resolution number 2, the price not to exceed $39,350.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Move on to resolution number 3. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we, pass resolution number 3 with price not to exceed $25,490.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
No.
Mr. Menegini?
No.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Move on to approval Strawberry Lake project change number order 2, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, so the next two communications involve the Strawberry Lake. The first one is for the change order, and that particular change order it's a balancing, this is now balancing change order, you know, for the Strawberry Lake project for the contractor, Wright Electric. Coleman Engineering had Wright Electric come down and do final walkthrough, do final restoration. They provided us information that, and their recommendation that Wright Electric met their obligations under the contract. And so, they're doing this balancing change order on the project. So we provided you with, the change order, paperwork, and the change order request is for $4,087.85, bringing the project total for Wright Electric to $199,960.33.
And now it's going to do a walkthrough, make sure everything's done correctly.
Yes.
I have a question on this thing now. I was brought out there by a guy that works at NG Electric. He's been out there. And he called me out there this afternoon. We have a pile of wire sticking out of the ground that's not connected to anything. And you walk through, and what we have going on also is, he was explaining, I'm not an electrician, but we ran 4-aught, which I understand that, from the pole to one junction box to another junction box, and then down to the lake. And there's no reason to run 4-aught wire that whole distance. He said, we just wasted a ton of money. So, but my thing is, if they pass, everything's good. I'm not understanding, I took pictures, we have wires sticking straight out of the ground that have, blown out.
Well, are they for the pedestal, for the meter pads?
They're right next to the road, they're right next to the dugout.
For the meter pads?
There's
We-
nothing there.
No, I know, we don't have the meter pads there.
You've got pedestals out in the other places.
Yeah, we still had a number of meter pedestals. I don't know. I wish they would come and talk to me and come talk to me.
I just came here right
Yeah.
from there.
So, I don't know, but I do know that our work, the last thing we have to do is put in those meter pedestals,
Okay.
which they were supposed to arrive this week, and then once we get those, just like the work up on District
And
5?
They're doing a final, if that was a final walkthrough, is this including the lights that are supposed to be put up over there?
No, that wasn't part of their job,
Okay.
yeah. And that work, I think that you're referring to is actually our city work, so
Yeah,
that's why I'd have to
I
go
don't know
see.
who it was, they were
Yeah.
up there, and he's like, hey, you got kids running around here and everything else, you
Yeah.
know, there, just, I'm sure it's not live, but.
No, it's
hope
not.
It's not live.
It's not live.
But
It's
still,
not, but
you have
we-
a pile of money. just-
Where's that at? Right,
Right.
by the
out-
dugout?
Right up the road, they have a dugout right there, and everything's dug, you can see where whoever dug, obviously was our.
Should have been some cones or something put there, tied colored ribbon to it or something, you know?
Yeah, there's nothing there.
what kind of wire did you say they ran to the lake?
A 4-aught, that's a real thick wire, so that's to run a 200 amp pump, and we don't have a 200 amp pump.
Well, we're not, I have to find out exactly what's all on that wire.
Okay. Yeah, he was just like, hey, like I said, I'm not an electrician, I don't know, but he said, you guys just spent way too much money on doing this. Because they ran 2 junction boxes to get to the pump.
Well, I think some of the thought process too is we were talking with Brett and some other in baseball, and we're trying to anticipate too with some potential upgrades, you know, down the road. So the last thing you want to do is if you're going to put in lighting or you're going to put in scoreboard, you're going to put in some of the stuff
But is
that,
that within the specs of this grant that we are?
No.
we are on?
no, but,
So we just spent more money out of this grant?
no, but the grant does pick up what we just put in the ground. Yes, the grant picks that up. But we were looking also at the future, because if we don't have it sized adequately for some of these other areas, then, and we expand,
Yeah.
you know, then we gotta tear it up and we gotta redo it. You know, so we, you know, we're trying to look at,
We didn't set up for cameras over there, there's no cable or anything like that for cameras, right?
no, in fact, that was a future discussion. We actually have to add one additional camera to catch the ball fields.
Right, but
And-
that ain't over there.
That ain't over there. That additional camera, that's another.
So
we
there
gotta
was
figure
no
out how to get
cable
back
or
there.
Wi-Fi or anything wasn't run over there, right?
No.
What's
The
that?
only wires that he showed me was, there's a 4-aught, and then there's wire for like an irrigation system that has 7 wires in it, a small wire, that's got a set of wires in it, which is another thing that he has questions on, why are you running that all the way down to the lake also, when your irrigation system's set up at the lake?
We gotta communicate to the pump.
Well, you just run direct power to that pump,
No.
up to your system, and your system goes from there.
Yeah, but then you also have a communication wire
Oh, yeah.
that runs to the
You
pump.
know more than I do on that, that's.
I mean,
But he was questioning a couple of things. I think he's pretty upset because some things happened with his place of employee movement or whatever that happened, but that's another thing that
I
we'll
don't,
discuss
I
later.
don't know.
But he pointed that out, and he actually called me, I was 6 o'clock, he called me, he said, hey, can you come down here, ask some questions? Yeah, I guess. But I just wanted to make sure that that was the final walkthrough, and this is what this is for, it's $4,000, because I wouldn't agree for that.
No, that is away from, that's what they did, you know, around the trail and, you know, the other work.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I need a motion on change order number 2 for Strawberry Lake project.
I'll make a motion that change order request number 2 be approved for $4,087.85, bringing the project total for Wright Electric to $199,960.33.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to approval Strawberry Lake security cameras.
We have pay request number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, Strawberry
Yeah.
Lake project pay request number 4. Thank you.
So now this pay request includes the balancing change order, and it's the final pay request. You're right about that.
Any questions?
for Ray Electric again, for 13,880, and you explained
Yeah.
what they finalized, what this is for?
Yes, this is,
There's not one like that.
this is for their final pay request.
Okay.
Did you have any questions, Jeff? No. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that pay request number 4 be approved for $13,881.49.
Support.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Move on to Strawberry Lake Park security cameras.
Okay, this is something we talked about in the budget hearings, and there were two areas that priority for council. I waited for the new budget, new budget to kick in on July 1 to bring forward the second of the priorities. And if you remember the past priority we did was the compost site. So this particular one is the Strawberry Lake Park. I did ask Mr. Gottstein about adding a camera over by the ball field, but he said that that had an additional, because of the distance, that there was some additional work that had to be done in order to include that. You know, we just couldn't throw a camera onto this particular bid. We had to do some work on figuring out how they were gonna send a signal back. So it's farther down, and we can't just add a camera and point it that way, because it's gonna be too far away. We won't be able to adequately see anything meaningful. So there's no sense spending any money if you can't actually see details. So I'm bringing forward for you to consider the original request, which is Knights Kingdom in the area around the ice warming shelter, or the shelter area. So
It's too bad because the ballpark area, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things going on at night there.
what we plan to do is put together a separate
System.
separate total for that. It'll be added into the same system, but it just involves more work.
We have cable running down Railroad Avenue, correct?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe we do.
It shouldn't be that tough. If we got, especially we got a clear, is there a pole that we can get on that we can see that from?
Can't cross the railroad track.
No. Is there a pole on Railroad Avenue that's high enough to capture the field if we put a camera on it?
We look at it, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, our poles aren't all that tall.
I understand.
Viaducts up there, so, yeah.
You don't need much,
Yeah.
because with cameras nowadays, you can really get some pretty good optics, even if it's 200, 300, 400 feet away, that's all we need.
Well, depends, yeah, I've got to talk to those guys on how far away they're willing to go. Because, we could put a camera down off the building, which would be closer than going over if you're talking about the camera over on this side, or just sending the signal over. Because we got to get the camera over by the ball field.
Yeah, mounting a camera, mounting a camera off, possibly off one of our poles.
Yeah, I think we'd be closer to go by the ice rink, down by closer to the park.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
How much do we have budgeted for that, Ray? I didn't.
There's not much across there from Railroad Avenue to that ball field, it's not
I
very
put this number in the.
far across
That is,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, that's why I had them all
Yeah.
placed up during the budget hearing, so.
What was the budget, $5,000?
It was this number.
It was this number?
Yeah, because we priced all of that to have that in the budget, to make sure we had it in the budget.
It's too bad that we have to do this.
Yes, it is.
Do I have a motion?
I motion that we accept GoTech's price of not to exceed $5,310.50 for Strawberry Lake Park security cameras.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Approval of WWTP equipment purchase, dissolved oxygen probe.
Okay, please don't shoot the messenger. We had an issue a couple weeks ago where we had a piece of equipment that failed. This dissolved oxygen meter is a vital piece of equipment that we use at the wastewater plant to make sure we're within our permitting. In the past, we had always worked on the probe side of the meter, and it's at least 10 plus years old, this meter in the probe, and about every 18 months, 18 to 24 months, we go through about $600, $600 working on this probe. This particular failure this year, just with the age of the meter and everything, it didn't make sense to keep working on the probe. We were starting to get results that we weren't 100% sure. And you know, for this type of operation, it's not a good idea to have numbers that you're not comfortable with. So Bob and I talked about it for quite a while. I asked him about the budgeting process, and you know, he had always worked it through on the probe side, so he didn't have the 2100. He didn't specifically call out the 2100. So I'd like to be able to move forward. Let's get that. You know, we want to get that new meter. I've already worked on areas within his budget where we got some areas that tell him to defer. So I think we'll be budget-wise, we'll be okay. I mean, the total meter is $2,000, so I mean, I can work on some of the areas within the budget. In fact, we already have, I've got a couple areas that we can already defer, so.
I notice you recommended Foundries Environmental Products out of Fairborn, Ohio,
Yes,
for $120 more than North Central Labs. Where's North Central Labs at? I see it's a 715 number. The reason I ask is service and support.
well, he's worked with this Foundries before, so he's got a relationship with them. It's the recommended probe, it's the one that industry standard that they use. So I don't think we didn't have any issues when we looked at it as to one or the other, so we're basing it off the price, and I think it's reasonable to go with the Foundrist on this one. And you get the support on it. I mean, either way, you gotta send it in.
What I don't understand is, here it says, the meter's been costing the department approximately $600 every 18 months over the past 3 to 5 years. Well, maybe that should have been included in this new project that we put in millions of dollars.
We've had that conversation. I had that conversation.
Any more questions? If not, do I have a motion?
We need this to stay in compliance with our permit for Eagle.
Yes.
I make a motion that the wastewater department be approved to purchase a new dissolved oxygen meter from Foundress Environmental Products for a price not to exceed $2,121.20.
I'll support it.
Mrs. Brew,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Menegini,
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Mararo,
Yes.
Mr. Pop.
I wish this was brought to us earlier, if we were spending that kind of money. All right, we'll move on to, approval wastewater department preventative maintenance proposal.
Okay, this particular item is part of our fiscal year budget. It was something that was brought to me during, at least May, when they started to look at what it took internally to, we have 10 lift station pumps, and it takes at least 2 people to work on those pumps. They were approached by the manufacturer, that's this Flight Xylem Water Solutions, and there's a maintenance agreement that they could have, that we could have, where this preventative maintenance would be handled through this agreement. In looking at the cost, we do a 3-year agreement with them. You know, whenever we go and do even something as simple as oil change, the actual equipment has to be manhandled. This pump has to be manhandled in order to do that work. And then whenever we do change it, we obviously have filters and gaskets and other parts that we end up purchasing during that process. So that's all included within the agreement. This is something that I think does make sense in looking at, you know, we've scaled back on personnel in the department, and I think this is something that, especially from a warranty standpoint, you know, does make sense. So the annual price for a 3-year agreement is $2,300 per year. That does include that 15% discount by doing it on a 3-year basis. And then we're also, there's some impellers that we have to replace down on the lift station number 4. That particular lift station we have quite a bit of problems with plugging up. And from what I've gathered over the years, that particular lift station, we've had you know, more and more use on that lift station. When it was originally designed, we did try to fix the design in this last project, upgrading the size, but you can only do so much within the mechanics of the system. But one of the suggestions now is, because we're still having some of those clogging issues, is to put these new impellers on. They're giving us a better price on the impellers through this agreement. So we're asking also to include impellers for $2,600. Now, this was all, I do have this all in the budget. So this is something that we did put in to cover for this year.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
I motion that we approve the wastewater department preventive maintenance proposal for a price not to exceed $2,300 annually, and a new lift station pump impeller for a price not to exceed $2,600.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
No, and the reason being is because we're out of budget with a probe, and now we're asking for something that is budget that is not a requirement.
Mr. Menegini?
I agree with Mr. Kramer. No.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
No. We'll move on to approval Sturgeon Falls Hydro Unit Number 4 bearing replacement.
Okay, for this unit number 4 repairs, I've given you information in the previous packets on the failure that we've had, or we had to shut down unit number 4. We've had some bearing wear. There was a recommendation we have to replace the bearing. We had excessive wear on the Duramax bearing, we think caused by the snails. So what we need, it was suggested that we go to this Lignum Vita bearing. So we actually had both Myron and HCMS, or CR Meyer, they both put in a pricing for us. Myron actually gave us a price for both the Duramax and the Lignum Vita bearing. The Lignum Vita bearing for Myron is less expensive, but we've had good results on Unit 3 with the wood bearing. So HCMS, Scott Klabunde, he partnered with CR Meyer to put in a quote, and he didn't even quote the Duramax, he's just so confident, he said, you should, in this situation, without doing some kind of filtering of water, to get, cleaner water into that Duramax bearing.
Ray, but you got a mistake on there.
I do have a mistake on it, it should be HCMS for the recommendation. So, anyway, backing up to, the HCMS, quote, they just quoted the Lignum Vita, bearing, and, the HCMS price is actually, slightly less than the Myron price, quote. It's for $49,300. They can start on the work, pretty much immediately, and, the advantage we have with HCMS too is that they're gonna roll into the, unit number 1 project. I did talk to Lidestro, they were ready to come here next week, but, they're okay, they're gonna, they're gonna wait and show up, right after we get unit 4 online. So I think that's a good tie-in as well, so, not only do we have a slightly, less expensive, quote from HCMS, we also, they fit in nicely with rolling right into our unit 1 project.
Well, I like this last little paragraph here. On a positive note, without the new vibration sensors that we put in, there would have been no way knowing there was any kind of issue underwater. There were no unusual noises and the machine appeared to be running smoothly. The sensor may have saved the unit from a complete failure. So those sensors were a good idea.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion that HCMS CR Myers construction be approved to purchase and install the Ligna Vitae bearing for unit number 4 for a price not to exceed $49,300.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Are we sure that positive that this bearing's gonna work?
We are being advised strongly from actually both companies that that's a better option than the one we have. Now, whether that's not gonna have problems, the unit 3 bearing, which is Lignum Vita, we've had it in for many years. And we haven't had an issue with the bearing, but that's a low-speed, turbine generator. So what we need, this is high speed, so it's gonna have a little more, it's gonna have
Wear on it.
more action, but we had it before as well. We had Lignum Vita, and then this was changed out. I don't know exactly when it was changed out, but we did have, the wood bearings before, so. Confidence is higher that this would work better in a less clean environment.
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Crane?
Yes.
We have no one in the audience. Mayor, council comments. Scott?
Strawberry Lake project, where are we at with the, when is our extension done? That we have to run?
July 31st,
July 31st?
yes.
Are we gonna look at the lights, everything, the whole project?
No, the lights aren't part of that project, so, no. So we have time to work on the lighting. The irrigation system is gonna be operational by, I won't say the end of next week, but the week after that for sure.
Do we get somebody to do the bleachers?
The bleachers, I'm working to try and get a builder to do that. I mean,
Okay.
the couple people I've talked to have,
Is there other things out there that are on this grant, like with Mike's Kingdom or anything?
no, it's just the bleachers and the irrigation. Those are the last two things. I did talk to our landscaping contractor and, to see if he would do it. I mean, it's basically, it's a double deck. It's not even off the ground. You don't even need a builder's license to do it, a contractor's license, because it's not elevated. So, excuse me?
Somebody talking about?
The bleachers. Yeah, so, I mean, everybody's so busy, I'm trying to find somebody to be willing to do it. that's where we're at, so. We will get it done, one way or the other.
Where are we at with that? I mean, I've come to you multiple times, and it's been 3 years now that this has been approved by both Parks and Rec and the council to build this new field. Just wondering to see now that we're off it again. If we had somebody that are leveling it now.
Yeah, Brett went out and put in grade stakes. We have fill that we have to bring back in, so we have to build up certain areas. So, we're gonna be back on that, when, David's been kinda hopping around, plus we had a retirement, so we're,
Okay.
but we haven't lost focus on it, it's just scheduling.
Yeah, I'm just, as I've seen out there, like I've known I'm involved out there, we have the one field for the softball, there's different fields, different, everything's a different field. And there is 40 girls, 10 years and younger, that are involved out there. That's 3 teams alone in one field. This has been going on. So we have 7, 8, 9 different teams that are trying to utilize one field. And now, just let the council know that the middle field has been stripped. That they took the sod off, and nobody's been able to use the middle field for the last 2 weeks now. I don't know.
Did they have permission to do that?
Who took the sod off the middle field?
Took the sod off the middle field, they
Who?
wanted to do it.
The lower one?
The middle one.
The middle.
Yeah. So the younger kids can't play that right now.
Well, they should have went to did they go to Parks and Recs? Well,
I
they
don't
need
know.
permission to even
No.
do that, so you better find out.
Yeah, we need to find out who did it and who gave permission to do it, for
Not
sure.
Not Park
Are
and
you
Rec.
kidding me?
Well, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, I just, that's bringing.
You didn't get nobody in trouble. Whoever did it got themselves in trouble.
That's bringing more, the softball field is now run out of people that are.
Why would you do that right now if they're using it?
Why would you strip a
And
baseball field with
I'm
sod?
not involved with anything.
This, from what I understand, when we had the sod removed from the upper field, was that the softball, it's for softball.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
sods, so-
Mr. Hall came and actually asked permission in front of the council
Yeah.
and the rec.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was coordinated.
Yeah.
My only guess, and I'll look into it.
I believe they're putting more stuff, they wanted to redo the field, they're putting more sod back down.
Well, them are city-owned parks, and I don't have a problem doing improvements, but, if people are gonna work on our fields out there, they need permission from the council, Parks and Rec, someplace. Just don't go in and start ripping up fields.
At least letting us know. I mean, we've, they've done quite a bit of work over the years.
Lots of maintenance.
Lots of maintenance. I mean,
Right, and I appreciate everything that they've done, but they still need permission to go do that.
Right, and why would you?
Why would you put that in this time of the year, the hottest
Right,
time of the year?
why would you tear it up in the middle of summer when it's getting used, I mean, at its height?
because there's an irrigation system. I'll check out,
Okay, the next question is, Oakcrest property down at the end there, with the easements or where they are, the ordinance and everything else. Do we start on that?
FERC, and other issues, I think it was going to the Parks and Recs committee. I drafted them all, came, this was one Parks and Rec discussion, continuation.
When we talked earlier about the Laughlin property, okay, so now we're trying to stop them to having access to our property. So that's what I'm saying, we're gonna have to grant everybody access to our property if we grant Laughlin's.
I think it's two apples and oranges. You're granting somebody permission to get to their camp versus a bunch of people just running out
But
there.
that's their property too,
There's access from both sides as well on that property.
on the property.
I mean-
From Pierce Gorge Road.
Yeah, Pierce Gorge Road, you could get up that way from.
Yeah.
I mean, Grant, we can stipulate, there's gotta be something to stipulate there. I mean, the Laughlin situation's a little different, right? They're trying to make a land sale, private land sale that needs easement through our property. We're not opening up to recreational use for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, I think, like some of the crap we got going on back here off Oakcrest Drive, right? I mean, is there something without discriminating or whatever we call it, to stipulate, you know, based off of that type of scenario?
Well, one of the things that we don't have and I alluded to that when we first kind of started on that a little bit, we don't have a policy in place that I'm aware of regarding when to guide the council one or the other, when to grant an easement, when not to grant an easement, under what conditions, under what costs, under what circumstances. And I think that it does open up some discussion, as we mentioned, you know, and he said.
That
hey,
kind of
does
opens a can of
this
worms.
create precedent? Can we declare this doesn't create precedent? Is it apples and oranges? We reference the Oakcrest property and then out there. You know, I can make the argument it's the same, I can make the argument it's different. Because, you know, what the law firms or the successors of interest are gonna utilize that property for, we don't know. We can't put restrictions in easements and language in the easements to give some control, and it is enforceable. Courts are very consistent with, it's still our property, and we can control what happens on our property and how it's used. They have to be reasonable restrictions, they have to have, you know, be reasonable in allowing it, but we can have reasonable restrictions on the property. But I think it would make some sense, you know, as I was digging around on this one, Ray and I talked about, you know, we looked at the Michigan DNR. Michigan DNR grants easements all the time, and they have kind of a checklist and a little bit of a guide whether or not easements are granted or not. And I referenced it in my memo and included some of the points to consider for council: surveys, reciprocal easements, costs, recreational use, what the purpose is. Is it for business? Is it for recreation? Is it for access? Are they landlocked or not? I think those are important considerations that help guide the council. We don't have a policy in place for that I'm aware of it. But Ray and I talked, and we trying to put that together. Again, we have a property sale policy we put together years ago.
Yeah.
And we've used it. It's been helpful for guidance. But for easements, it's a little different animal.
I think the interest on the properties is different from the city's perspective too. I mean, we have 160 acres that our intent, I mean, we've publicly stated and we've documented it in our planning, is to have that area go residential, sell and develop residential. Whereas we're not at the hydro, you know, it has a different use, reuse, long-term use, you know, so those are all tied into the access. To me, those are all tied into the access questions as to why you would consider granting or not granting. You know.
Okay, the last thing I'd like to say would be, please be aware that COVID is still out there and it's just gaining power as we're getting along. That's all I got.
Brett?
I have nothing.
Jeff?
Glad to hear nobody got hurt at the fireworks last night. Glad to see the fireworks go off.
Great job.
Yeah, great job with the firemen, as always. Want to thank them. And that's all for me.
Lee?
I got a couple items here. Ray, what have we done about the businesses that are discharging quantities of grease into our system, which is totally unacceptable? And this has been going on for years. It said in the memorandum here that they are unacceptable for a number of years. They have been warned by the city, but do not seem to be taking the warning seriously, as the formal procedures for enforcement have yet to be used. Now, this is costing our plant down there a lot more money, and we're struggling to maintain our rates down there. And like I said, this has been going on for a couple of years. What are we gonna do about it and when?
We are going to go in and handle those inspections soon, within 30 days.
Within 30 days,
Within
okay.
30 days, he's going to be inspecting. He has had the material for 6 months, so,
Okay, just the 3 places or?
no.
Everyone?
We're going in everywhere.
Okay.
We're not gonna discriminate. We have an idea in local areas, but we should go in and there's a check sheet. I've provided them with all of the documents, all of the information they need. They have to set up and go in. Now, we
Okay.
were delayed, March through June, you know, with COVID, but now we have to get in there. We have to do that
Okay,
inspection.
okay.
Especially since you brought it up now twice. So I'm gonna make sure it happens.
Okay, and the 4th of July fireworks were really good, and like Mr. Moraro said, glad that nobody really got hurt on there. And on the lighter side, for all you chicken eaters, today is National Fried Chicken Day. That's all I have.
I have one more question on that ball field. I know it's been raining lots. Does anybody know if they're not watering off of our system? Are they out there?
It hasn't been shut off.
Are you talking about Oakcrest?
Yeah, the
No, they're not on our system.
No, the baseball fields at Old,
The baseball fields
are on that.
are on
Yeah,
our
that
system.
baseball field that they just put the new sod in. Are they using city water for that?
Yeah, the baseball fields are on now our system. Because we had Oakcrest come off, we were using the Oakcrest pond, but since
Supposed to be a
we,
meter on that?
yeah, but they're not on our system anymore.
No, no,
Oh,
for the,
yeah, well, they have a calculation that they use on how many hours. So there's no meter on it.
Yeah, there's nothing on there.
No, there's,
Lots of hours being put on there.
Yeah,
now.
there's no meter on it, but it's-
On
yeah.
Waterfield. Hasn't been shut off.
Technically, you could put the price of that water that's going to the Park and Recs on the Park and Recs budget.
yeah.
Not saying that we should, I'm just saying technically.
Well, we try to keep track
I thought
because,
we had a meter out there before, last year, the year before, when we got off that system, I thought they would put a meter
okay,
there.
I'll have to ask them about that though, about the whole process. But, well, one of the things that we try to do, this goes back a number of years, is that, we had a water loss percentage that was just out of this world. And so we didn't know if it was coming from unmetered sources or customers like, the city. The city wasn't at one time, way back, we weren't even charging ourselves or we weren't metered. So we had put meters on everything we possibly could. And then the other is like, working with parks, the two areas of working with Parks and Rec and working with the fire department. Because the fire department's another one, they fill something, they fill a truck and, that at least know how many gallons are going out. Because if you can identify those areas, then you can take those off of, we got leaks or some other issues. So, when we do the leak, like we did last year, the leak detection study, that's very helpful because we'll go in and we'll catch some of the leaks, especially on hydrants. So that's a constant,
Okay.
communication we have with the water department, is to make sure that they're taking care of that.
Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. Thank the fire department every year. They do a wonderful job. These guys put time and hard work into that, and they put in hard work to fundraise all the years. And I know this year that they didn't go around and do a 50-50, so I'm sure next year they're gonna have to do a lot more fundraisers to raise money for the fireworks. Just wanna really a shout out to them and appreciate all the hard work that they do.
And they're not gonna be selling corn out to
Yeah,
fair
they
this
won't
year
be
either.
selling corn out
That's a big money maker for them.
at the fair this year either, so,
That's the major money.
yeah. So they're really gonna be hurting for fireworks next year, so if the Fairmont Department does something, get out and, try to get out and support them. And they didn't go door to door either, I don't believe this year, did they?
no.
Not that I know of, no.
Mr. Wagner had brought up, so I did some work at his house last week saying that they're trying to bring in a one-day sale out at the fairgrounds.
They got a meeting tomorrow to discuss what's gonna happen for the Dickinson County Fair. As of right now, it's gonna be very, very limited. There's not gonna be the carnival as of right now going forward. It's gonna probably be a youth-style, function with the 4-H animals still gonna get exhibited. That's the lines that they're going on right now, but there's nothing etched in stone on that.
And then I imagine with the cases going up, that's gonna make their
Yeah, that
decision.
could change tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Especially in our area.
Yep.
Last week, Channel 6, I think it had it, they were showing all the vehicles lined up on the Mackinac Bridge with the trailers and, big vans, and I mean, it was just jammed. And nothing going down, everybody was coming up here.
Did you see the beaches at Marquette?
Yeah.
They've never seen the beaches packed that much. Never.
That's all I have. Ray, do you have anything?
I just had one question. On that, one wastewater agenda item, I had actually two items on there with the preventive maintenance and the impeller. was it both of them that goes down, or just the impeller?
Both as of now, in that motion, yes, both as of now.
Okay. Right.
That was what, the maintenance and the,
Yeah,
Impeller for unit four.
maintenance.
We had an impeller for unit 4 in there too.
Yeah, because the impeller was $2,600.
we need that impeller, don't we? Yeah.
I would like to see it come back in a new motion, a new item.
Sounds like you're gonna have to break it apart, Ray.
Which one? I mean,
If we need the
We need the
impeller,
impeller.
you know, then that's one thing, and even bringing it back is a separate,
So the
So
preventative maintenance, put that.
I would, yes, not.
We're gonna pay, so just so you know, we're gonna pay $4,100 for an impeller instead
Absolutely.
of $2,600.
Yep,
So, but if we did both of them, we get it cheaper, right, the propeller?
Correct. It's gonna cost us $1,500 more by not taking a maintenance contract for 3 years at $2,300 a year.
You
Yeah, but-
can put them both on there.
2,300 a year is way more than 4,100.
No, I'm not, I'm just, yeah, just,
Should
there's
I-
a couple ways to look at it, that's your way, you
Yep.
know?
How about if I have the wastewater supervisor come in and also explain that?
That'd be fine.
I think if you put them back on the docket, you know, we'll look at it again.
Okay.
Is it all you have, Rick?
Yeah, I just appreciate everybody's, hard work, the firemen for putting on their fireworks. I always appreciate all the work they do for that, and also the public for supporting them. This year, actually next year is going to be, you mentioned it's going to be tough because they don't have a couple of their fundraising. So we're going to have to monitor that and see what we can do to help them out, help us out, because that's a huge benefit for us. A little disappointed, we have some of our, in past years, the residents seem to be okay. They kind of stopped their local stuff and let the city go. This year seemed a little bit more aggressive, and so just asking people, if, when the firemen are putting on the fireworks, maybe you could back off a little bit and let that go, and then, carry on after they're done. So I just kind of noticed that this year. I don't know if you guys noticed it.
There were a lot of people lined up on US 2, going towards Iron Mountain, parked in Forsland and Dairy Queen and all the way up, quite a few.
And again, too, is I always appreciate getting through this without having injuries. So.
Grant?
Nothing.
Okay. Girls?
Well, just a thought I had is maybe we should think about putting in the newsletter next month, maybe just putting a plug out to the community. Because a lot of people do come in and drop off $20, $25. If we explain that they're not going to be doing the fundraisers, put a little, people might just.
Right.
It's a good idea. We,
Maybe
when
get
we-
together with David or Tony or something, just to make sure that's, I'm sure they want to do that, but
Oh,
just,
absolutely.
When we did that a couple years ago with the music in the park, the donations came in a lot quicker. We did it this year with the museum, and their donations picked up.
What about throwing on our access channel too?
The newsletter, the little clip out in the newsletter, I think really does work well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
When's,
now, people will look at it.
On a side note, when's Leif Erikson gonna be, going to his new spot over there?
Well, it's getting close. The DDA has asked, though, that we consider waiting until October for Leif Erikson to have kind of an official part during Leif Erikson. So,
And what if they cancel Leif Erikson?
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, If they do, I think the staff and I will carry it down ourselves.
There you go.
My opinion is that it'll catch people's eyes. I mean, it might help some businesses downtown if the quicker the better, and that's what the DDA is about. So that's my 2 cents, but I'll bring it up to the DDA, I guess.
Yeah, bring it up at the DDA. I mean, there's no magic to it. I think it can go just about any time.
all right, now I need a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No, we're going into closed session.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Can-
Way to go,
And then
Brett.
we'll be coming out, and when we do come out, we'll just be coming out to adjourn.
Yes.
I need a motion to go into closed session.
I motion that we go into closed session.
Support?
Candy, you put on our reply.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, do I-
City manager's evaluation and contract negotiations. And we do have permission for Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Can we take a short 2-minute break, bathroom break or whatever?
No, let's just stay here.
Well, I suppose
Just gonna stretch your legs for a minute, Ray, we've been sitting for 2 hours.
Candy, you do know it's 10 minutes and I gotta go to bed. You do know that.